it's Amy Calandrino here, coming to you with the latest episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. After over a decade of providing expert commercial real estate advice to small and medium-sized business owners as well as families, I've met some impactful and influential people along the way. The goal of the podcast is to talk about mindset as well as mix in some business and commercial real estate. So if you're wanting to grow, you're tuning into the right show. I have with me today someone who I'm actually able to call a friend, Carrie Bobb, and she's currently with Foundry, but before she was with Carrie Bobb and Co. and co-founder of Hello Jenny, specializes in mixed-use developments, evoking emotion through retail leasing. And then Hello Jenny develops digital strategies for commercial real estate by aligning the social media strategy of an asset with leasing strategy. Before having her own company, she's been with CBRE in San Diego for 15 years. And you've worked with Sephora, Lululemon, Sinopolis, and so many others, and also represented on the landlord side Kilroy, Protea, and Regency Center. And she's also a fellow Power Beacon and Mama and all the things. So welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we finally got here. Like, we've been talking about this for a little while, and it's just so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Life happens, doesn't it?
It does. It's a circus.
Yes. So I told you that we would kind of talk about, I already talked about in your biography a bit about what you do in commercial real estate, but is there anything that you're working on right now that you can talk about? And, what you've been working on primarily now with you've gone from one side of the U.S. to the other. You want to kind of tell us where you're at now?
Sure. So my family and I relocated from San Diego to Nashville 2 years ago. We've officially hit the 2-year mark, which is wild to say. We're part of the California exodus that is making their way east. And
yep,
it's been fun. We miss California. We love all of our San Diego people. But it's also been really fun to do something new and exciting and getting to know a whole new group of people. And we love it. We're here and thriving. On the business front, I'm working on Nashville Yards, which is one of the largest developments in the country right now. And that's just been a really fun project to work on. The music venue opens in March of next year, 2025, wow. And we'll have some staggering openings after that. So we are in crunch time. That's taking up a lot of my time, and it's just a super fun project to be part of in the city.
Wow. And that were you already in the relationship with who you're representing right now, or is that something that came along once you moved over to Nashville?
Well, I knew them and I had talked to them, but we didn't move here for that listing or job or anything like that. A few people have asked about that, but no, I had known them, and I have a relationship with the person who's running the retail at the project. And then I've been on it not even a year yet. So we had moved here and been here, but I did have a prior relationship with them. Southwest Value Partners is the developer, and they're based out of San Diego. So, yeah.
Oh, that works out well.
Yeah.
Well, and you probably have a bit of synchronicity too, because we're both very active on social media and commercial real estate. So, we have Melissa Alexander, Casey Flannery, and some others. Have you been able to get together? Well, you guys are at the same brokerage. So
yeah, they're right there. They're right over there. I can see their desks.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun crew. Awesome. Yeah, we have a good time.
Oh yeah, I enjoy, whenever I'm able to get together with you. I like Foundry. I think it's a great brand. So, you are mom to 3, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you balance, having such, large projects that you're working on in business and, being a good mom? And then also we'll kind of get into some of the advocacy things. But how do you manage that? Do you have like a routine or some bookends for each day that you have?
I'm getting better with the routine. As I was younger, I really didn't have healthy boundaries, and I was spread way too thin, trying to do it all. Yep. And my quality of life wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I'm not saying that my quality of life is awesome at the moment, but I feel like I'm doing a better job, and I'm very, very focused every day on time management. So I do have a routine as of the start of 2024. So it's not like this is something I can say has been working for me for years.
Still do tell if it's making an impact. Yeah.
I'm actively working on this, but I wake up at 5 a.m. every day, sometimes earlier, and I give myself 2 hours for body, mind, spirit, where I read my Bible every morning, I will read a book, and then I just go for a walk. Nothing like, if I say I'm going to lift weights 4 days a week, or I'm going to hit X amount of steps, I can never hit those goals. And I always feel like I've failed in some way.
Yeah.
And so I read Atomic Habits years ago, which I love. And so I just started like just giving myself some time. Sometimes I work during that time too, just to get some of those heavy things that are on my mind off my plate. But I really try to invest in myself first, because if the day starts and I haven't invested in myself, I never will. Like, you're always doing things for other people. And I also will not work out once my day has started. Like, I tell myself I'll go at lunch or I'll go at the end of the day, and sometimes I will, but most of the time I don't. So that's kind of been my routine this year, and I feel like I'm in a good rhythm. I'm in a good sync. I've also this year, and I haven't shared this a ton because I don't know. I don't know. But my husband and I decided we were going to do 2024 sober. So we have actually, I think today, I'm going to check my app, but I think today might be my 180th day sober. I'm 180 days sober today. So I started in December, and we were kind of like, let's see what happens if we were sober in 2024. Like, let's see what happens with our finances, with our business, with our life. And it's been really great. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is how we're going to be forever. So I'm just putting that out there, but it's been really, really great. And I do think that's a key that unlocks something, right?
Yeah.
I think sobriety is a huge block in the building blocks of success. And you don't necessarily need all the blocks, but it's one of the blocks that helps people be successful. Unfortunately, because it took me a long time to finally go, okay, let me try it. And it's been great.
Well, I've heard too, after a certain period of time, you start to get a little bit more energy and clarity that you maybe even didn't even know like existed. I have not made it that long. I've definitely like worked to consume less, because I feel like it can be a bit like addictive, and it starts to become a bit of a crutch. And there's better ways, but what did you find from the journey?
Oh my gosh, it's hard. It's one of the hardest things I've had to do. And I think the first 30 days was probably the hardest. And then it's been pretty easy after that. But there's definitely so there are days where I'm like hanging on by a thread. And it's usually the days where I'm like really tired and I'm home on a Friday night. It's not necessarily like networking events or being out with a bunch of people.
Okay.
It's like a weekend in the summer, and you know, a skinny margarita sounds great, and I don't go in. But I think hitting certain benchmarks or milestones, whether it's getting through a weekend or a week or those first 30 days, then it gets significantly easier. And now once you kind of now that I'm at like 180 days, I don't want to ruin the little run,
the streak
and momentum.
Yeah.
But it is really hard. I think just high achievers in general can have addictive personalities, or you like the highs and lows and the, you know, just the thrill of everything. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I love it. Our quality of life has been a significant difference in our quality of life, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to give up alcohol and such for like 30 days, and then but it becomes a all or nothing thinking. I'd be almost better off just like giving up alcohol, or just making like minor tweaks and not being like so.
I couldn't do extreme. It. Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily drinking like a lot in one sitting, but I was just consistently drinking a lot through the week. And I I couldn't do it. I had to do all or nothing. So
Yeah.
that works for me. But
Yeah.
and then the other thing
Hard.
that I did to help me with that, and to help me with getting back into consistent exercising, because I know you've done that too. You changed your mindset on physical fitness, which I'd love to hear how you changed that mindset. But I started following like some of the Sober Curious movement on social, and then
Mm.
I started following women who have gotten into running and made like either lost a ton of weight through running or their lives have changed. And that's been really motivating. And so my algorithm has changed a lot about the types of content that is being pushed towards me. And so that's been really encouraging too. So
It is really cool. Like when you start consuming certain
mm-hmm.
content and you start to get that feedback. For my working out, it started out about like, I mean, I've my mindset changed towards working out probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where I actually really like enjoyed it. But then it was really hard when my kids were young to necessarily fit it in. But then I switched to one of the top healthcare places, and I just said to myself, like, I'm going to treat myself like an athlete and think of myself like an athlete and like take this seriously. And I'm going to do like strength training, and I'm also going to do the cold plunge afterwards, and I'm going to do the sauna, and I'm going to be totally almost kind of like Joe Rogan like about it. And I haven't lost like any weight necessarily, but I've lost, well, I can't say I lost inches because now my calves are bigger. My biceps are bigger and I'm like way stronger, but I really enjoyed it. But I think that what for me is I started to then not be intimidated by the people like I thought were like, oh, these elite athletes. And they kind of become my friend now. And like, we're like, hey, you know, and it's become like a bit of like a community. So I really, really enjoy that. I think the next thing I'm going to be implementing though is I really, really like lifting, but I do need to take off like some of like the extra stuff so you can really see the muscle. So
I know the diet is so hard.
I think my diet is okay, but I could benefit from doing like some high intensity, which I hate. I hate doing high intensity stuff.
But just the fact that you're so consistent about moving your body and things like that, I think what I have found, because I was not consistent for such a long time, up until recently too, that when you're disciplined in one area of your life, it makes it easier to be disciplined in other areas of your life. And that is a huge differentiator for me, is when I'm working out, I'm more disciplined in other, in just in like keeping track of my time, where I'm spending my hours, if I'm getting my outbound prospecting out, and you know, it all kind of builds on each other.
Well, I'll tell you, I actually put it in my calendar and I like circle it.
Your workouts?
Yes. And it's sacred. Like I try to go from like 3 to 5 usually.
Oh, do you really?
Which I know most people, but it's changed a little bit this summer where it's more like 4:30 to 5:30 now because of like kid care pickups and those types of things. But afternoon works for me, but I am going to try doing like on top of that, maybe some high intensity first thing, maybe push my wake up time up like a half hour and go like running around my neighborhood a little bit, get my metabolism moving and see if that can like help augment what I'm doing. But no, it definitely is transformational. And I think you read the Bible front to back last year.
Yeah, I'm doing it this year too.
And I think doing hard things is like flexing the muscle, and then you look back and you realize what you've done. And like I've been reading the book The Gap in the Gain by
I'm reading
Dr.
that right now too. Life changing. Oh my gosh.
Life changing.
Love that book. No, I know. I was going to do a post on it today. I'm not even done with the book. And that is so significant. It's a great book.
I think it is geared towards high achievers like you and I. I'm like almost like addicted to achieving like, a little bit. And, like I can like, you know, but I think like looking back and then realizing the progress that I had, I've had, and I think that has like an attitude of gratitude that helps you appreciate. So like I look back like a year ago, okay, the needle hasn't like changed on the scale, but then my doctor's like, oh my gosh, are so much stronger. And like, I, have increased what I'm leg pressing by like 100 pounds. And, my husband had his back hurt like about a month or so ago, and he would always do all the schlepping is what I call it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like when we would go to like
Like
the
a pack
beach or
mule.
something, unloading the car and moving all the things around and getting them out in and out. And I did all those things. I'm moving the bikes, and I'm like not even like winded. And I'm like, a year ago, I would just been like, we're not taking this vacation because I don't want to have to deal with moving around all the stuff. And like, I was exhausted, but I think I do have a lot more stamina.
That's
is something
so great.
I've noticed by continuing to do that. So,
okay.
Yeah, I do recommend
it. So I think the gap and the gain is phenomenal. Measure what matters is really good too.
Yes.
And then the Stephen Covey group wrote a book on like the 4 stages of execution on achieving your wildly important goals. And I think those 3 books have been so significant for me in this past year because it's helped me really zero in and focus on what is my wildly important goal, personally, professionally. So if I'm trying to hit a certain number in business, what is the one thing that you measure to get there? And I mean, most of us in brokerage or commercial real estate is outbound calls. So I am diligent about tracking every single call and trying to beat myself. And like gap in the gain, it's like, it's just you versus you, right? And how do we get to the one thing that's going to be the differentiator to impact your goal? And so that's been super interesting. And so those 3 books have been really impactful on how I'm managing my time and my business. And like the question that you had asked about, how do you do family and work, is trying to do as much as you can within the boundaries that you give it. And like everything bleeds into everything, I feel like, but being mindful of it and trying to control it where you want, and sometimes you can't. But I think that has been a really critical piece to me feeling much better about the time management and the chaos is I am diligent about tracking almost like an attorney, how attorneys track like every 6 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever. I track every 30 minutes. I write down where I spent my time, and I have an Excel spreadsheet where every Friday I log in how many cold calls I made for the week, for which property, how many hours I spent on each client, so I can tell where the emphasis should be for the next week. So everything is staying on track, and I've got some accountability for myself too.
It's curious you said that. I had some definite, very productive periods last year. For like 1 quarter, I used Toggle. It's a time tracker, and it syncs with your Salesforce. So every deal I had for Salesforce, and I'm a former paralegal, so I would just say, look at the client's deal, enhance the marketing product, make some cold calls. And I'd do like 10:10 a.m. to like 11:17 a.m. and I'd log it, and I could go thing to thing to thing. And I would also have a file. I would set up a file for each teammate in my office because, I'm more of like a leader,
right?
And so how much time am I spending with each person? And then how much time am I spending on business development, and then logging it. I feel like, it was really successful. Maybe that's something I can get back to.
Do you not use Toggle anymore?
Less chaotic.
Do you not?
I haven't been for the last 6 months. My life was I didn't want to tell anybody while I was in the thick of it. Kind of like you with being sober. I didn't want to tell everybody. My kids were like being homeschooled for like the last 6 months because my son was thrown out of private school or asked for him to leave, kind of thing. And we all made the decision to do that. But he was home. I went through like 8 nannies, and it was super chaotic, like having a 3 and 4-year-old at home where I primarily work. And I was just doing everything that I could to just keep my head like above water and keep progressing.
Yeah.
So on Monday of this week, they just got back into like a normal environment where they are not in the house during the day, and I'm not having to coordinate nannies. But yeah, maybe that's something I can get back to, is that because it was very helpful. I had the app on the phone. I also have it on the computer, and I could kind of just track my day as I went along.
It just made me feel like I'm aware of where things are going, what we're doing. And even though I'm like, and I'm in control in some respects, right? Like our day gets hijacked or an hour gets hijacked or whatever, but I at least am aware of it and I'm in control of this time, because I think where we get stuck is like we get pulled in all these different directions and we're not even aware of where we're spending our time. And so I think just tracking it has made me feel much more in control. Just tracking it and measuring what matters. And going back to the gap and the gain, looking back, going, okay, this is how far we've come. This is where I want to go. What does it take to get there? And measure that one thing, not like all these different things, kind of like my step count.
Don't worry about a dashboard. Let's just...
To me, I'm not looking at my step count. I am sometimes, but I'm not necessarily measuring that. I'm not necessarily measuring my macros or calories or anything, but I measure how many times per week I actually physically got out and worked out and walked. And I measure how many did I read the Bible and am I reading, 4 days a week, and just measuring those little things, which are not heavy. That's an easy thing to measure, moves the needle on everything else, which has been really interesting.
Yeah. No, I think otherwise you put a lot of pressure on yourself and you're actually spending so much time tracking all these different metrics that it can keep you from making any, significant progress. One thing I did is, I usually read about 20 to 30 books a year, but this year I purposely just brought my goal down to like 12.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing a book.
Oh, great. Okay. What are you writing about?
From perfect to real, embracing authenticity to achieve peak performance. And it's all kind of about I'm not trying to be perfect. Yeah. We're not logging every single metric. It's just, doing the best that I can, with the time that I can do. And, so it's been good, and it centers around, it kind of is a little bit biographical for the first 3 chapters, kind of giving a framework of why this was important for me to do as a working mom. And then goes into the sport success system, SPORT, which is synergistic, persistent, omniscient, radical, and tautological. And S is who you're around. P is being persistent. O is always learning. R is not being afraid and eradicating fear. And T is the habit stacking. And it's really cool. We're actually pretty well through SPO, and then the first 3 chapters, and then there's a bit in the other one. So hoping to launch it early 2025, but I'm at night, I usually read, but I'm spending some time writing instead. And I also want to kind of get this podcast still to another level. Because I really love doing deals. I'm a deal junkie, totally love doing deals, but I also really love this too. And I'm finding it's really interesting. I'll go to a chamber event locally, and someone's like, oh, I just listened to your last 3 podcasts and this was great. And I learned this, and it was great to hear Ken Ashley talking about office space. And I'm realizing, probably kind of like you having Hello Jenny, it was you like doing commercial real estate, but you also had this other part of you.
Yeah. And it's synergistic and it works together. And I think that's awesome. I think it's great. So how are you juggling it all? How are you writing a book, doing a podcast, managing a brokerage company?
I do have help. So I have, for almost the last 10 years, I basically have hired a mom for myself. So I have a housekeeper / who will be at my house two days a week, sometimes more. Next week, I have some interns starting. So my housekeeper is going to come on Saturday morning and help me do a bunch of rearranging so that I have an office space. We're going to be at the office, but then there's going to be days I'm going to have them here for my podcasts, and the marketing interns, they can see how it happens. And I don't want to move my studio out of my house, but I need to clear some space in here. It got kind of on the other side of the camera.
Instagram versus reality type of thing.
Yeah. This is so pretty over here. Don't look over there. So she's going to help me get that organized. I've only had 3 since then. But yeah, Mercedes has been with me, and she keeps things like organized. And then yeah, I have a couple virtual assistants. I have people for marketing. And just saying no. No, I've gotten really good at saying no lately. It's hard, but like, whether it's someone wanting me to represent them that's, just starting out, not fully together, like making sure I'm not investing too much time there so that I can get to all the other things that I have. I've just become really good at saying no. And then also trusting my gut. If I have to change course on something, doing it quickly before investing too much
Yeah.
time. Yeah. But that's what I do. Like I just try to do those same things, like working out usually about 5 times a week, going to Bible study once a week, going to church, and I do Sunday school. Another hack I have is I have a bag for whatever it is I'm doing. So if like I'm going to church, I literally have a canvas bag with all the stuff to go to church
Oh,
easily there. So I'm
interesting.
not
That's
having to think
great.
ahead of time. I'm a very visual person. So if everything has a space, everything has a container, then I can keep it all. Like I have a cart in my office that one level of the cart is everything to do prospecting. Like everything is very visual. Everything has a spot, especially in my kitchen.
That's awesome. I love that. I love those hacks.
Yeah. So we are those that know you know of Carrie's Law. So we've got a little bit more serious stuff to talk about. But can you talk a little bit about the precipice, or not a little bit, but can you talk about the precipice for that, and then also then how it kind of weaves into what we're doing together as power beacons?
Yeah, of course. So I always tell people when I'm like at coffee or at lunch sharing the story, I always tell people brace yourself because it's kind of a gnarly story, but a lot of good came out of a really bad situation. But I was 39 years old, had married, 3 kids, and was attending an industry event at ICSC in 2018 and was drugged and raped by an executive with the company that I was with at CBRE. And from that moment on, we have these moments in our life, these hash marks on the timeline of our life where like some are bolder than others. My life was really different after that night. And there were a lot of different forks in the road of how things could go. And it was just really interesting, one thing after another, of how we all make decisions and what we do and how things go. So anyway, I stopped working, reported it to the company, learned throughout the process that there's a little clause in employment contracts that's an arbitration clause, but it has really big impacts when it's relating to sexual assault in the workplace. But basically, 60 million Americans had signed an employment contract with an arbitration clause saying that they will not talk about it and they will not sue their employer if their employer rapes them at work. And I ended up not taking money for confidentiality in my settlement with the company, and then went and lobbied Congress in 2019, and they introduced a bill, Carrie's Law, to the House of Representatives. It was a bipartisan bill. Debbie Lesko in Arizona was Republican, Karen Bass, a Democrat out of California, who's now the mayor of Los Angeles, co-authored the bill, and then it passed. It got rolled up into Gretchen Carlson's bill in 2022 and officially passed, which was incredible. It was such an amazing experience to be part of something like that. The lobbying experience is ironically a lot like brokerage. It's the same kind of skill set where you just kind of are cold calling, knocking on doors.
Yeah.
My daughter doesn't totally understand all the nuances of what happened. She knows something bad happened, but when we watched Legally Blonde 2, she was like, oh, that's what you did, which was like the coolest thing ever. So that she kind of understood that that's what we did. So that was just really amazing to be part of that. So many people, not just in our industry, but so many people rallied. So Intel, Microsoft, Allstate, Uber, all endorsed the bill. Westfield, so many small commercial real estate companies, all my friends in the industry kind of like rallied and came together. And it was so scary when you step out to talk about something like this. I thought my career in commercial real estate would be over. I'd never be able to do anything. I know. I mean, everyone's really just rallied and been so supportive, and I've learned so much through that process. And then the power beacons kind of came out of COVID, like maybe a
Yeah.
year after COVID. And Marissa put together just like a list of influential women in commercial real estate. And we all decided, oh, we should all get together. And we did. And then that's kind of how we all came to be. And I was one of the, we were all on the list. And then it's really women who I believe are just giving back to make the industry better than when we got it. So many women did that for us, that paved the way
Right.
for us, that it's kind of just a way for us to give back and make an impact and pay it forward.
Yeah, I think it was so brave. And you said it was something like 60 million
Yeah.
people had that particular type. And it's one thing to have like arbitration for some of the disputes, but it would even encompass something like that would, something like rape or
Yeah. And it wasn't
harassment,
even
and
called
it
out.
would cover
So
everything.
people didn't know that that's
Yeah.
what they were signing, which
Yeah.
is so wrong on so many levels, that it was the unintended consequences, or intended consequences in some cases, was that it was protecting predators and silencing victims and all sorts of horrific things. And the whole thing is more than I ever wanted to know on the, the subject of getting into the law of why certain companies want to do that. Some companies never had an arbitration clause in their employment contract. So it was just, I've learned a lot, but now there's transparency in the workplace. There's ways around it at times that companies get around, but for the most part, there's transparency that if this happens, that it's discoverable. Because like my case had not been discoverable until I came out publicly with it. And so anyway, yeah.
Well, with the power beacons though too, we got together in 2023, and I think there were 15 of us in Orlando, and I think of the 15, all but one had experienced some type of differing levels, even in our industry of rape, assault, harassment, whether verbal or physical or otherwise. And it was really interesting. So we kind of talked about last year if we could put together some type of campaign to bring awareness to this in the industry and help to protect people at different conferences. And, we made it a point from the beginning. This is not intended to, this is not for any one conference. It's for conference safety and commercial real estate and beyond. It's not, when people are drinking or using drugs or otherwise, these kinds of things can occur, especially when someone's in a different environment they normally are. It can make it more easy for a predator to take advantage of someone. So it was interesting that we were like, okay, let's do that this year. And from that, you were a huge part of that video. We were actually in Biz Now and picked up. And I think you said, and multiple people said, what was really shocking was this was much more involved than we ever thought it was.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you want
it's
to
way
speak
more
to that?
prevalent than I even realized. And people call me all the time with stories. And so I knew that it was prevalent. But after that video, the number of people that came forward saying that they've been hurt, like physically hurt or drugged and a friend got them out. There's a lot more of those stories, which that also is like really crazy that those people are intended to be hurt. But there's a lot of those, a lot of those. And, nobody wants to be the poster child for this. So I'm always like hesitant to post or talk about it. And I actually called Allison Weiss and I said, I'm going to do this post. I'm going to record a video. Am I crazy? Am I operating in my trauma, or is this something that I should actually post about? Because it's so disturbing that I feel like we should be talking about it. But I also don't want to be, there's all these different connotations when you talk about a subject that is as gnarly as this. And the response has been so great. Like, so, I think we've
Right.
had over 100,000 views of people, like collectively, of people who are viewing all of
Yeah.
our videos. I know mine, I think, was over 30,000 just on one video, and then another. So I don't know, but it was a lot. And I don't have 30,000 followers. So it's just amazing that that's how much it was spread, and people are spreading the word. And I think it's really awakened some industry leaders and things like that are responding appropriately. And the ramifications or the ripple effect of just this small group of people who have just kind of spoken out about it has been really interesting. I think the tone in which we're talking about it is, we have to note that it is not in an angry voice. It's not trying to
No.
hurt any one person. It's not trying to hurt an organization. It's genuinely trying to protect people and to help companies or conferences protect people in the first place. And I think that is why it's being so well received. I've talked about this a little bit, and I think it's really important that when you have been hurt, or you're speaking on any subject where you're coming from a place of trauma, if you are angry, or your motives are just trying to dig, that comes out and it's not well received. And so that's a hard place to get to. And that's kind of why I called Allison, because it was like, I just want to make sure I'm not coming from this place of, you're fighting, right? And because I am mad.
Yeah.
I am mad that this is happening to people. And so I think having people in your life where you can like check yourself with is really important. But I've learned a lot on that space. It's been hard, but it's been really good. And it's a much better place to live from. But it's a constant, give and take.
Yeah. I think when we came out with that whole campaign, like hearing all of those positive responses, and then also I just think people understanding too that this whole drugging people thing has become, I mean, I guess people don't want to hear no. It used to be like no means no. And now people don't necessarily want to hear the no. And so then I don't know where in our culture that it's become like, well, let's avoid getting the no. Let's drug.
It's real.
I've heard people say like, now I know, like we got to like watch out for our kids going away to college, and all of these different things, because it's become, people don't, it's just not asking for it, taking an unfair advantage of someone.
And it's happening all the time.
Did you come across any studies or anything about that? Like how much more prevalent, drugging is over the last, 5 or 10 years than it maybe used to be like a decade ago, or anything to that effect?
Well, I know. So my case was in 2018. They had said there were 15 different kind of date rape drugs. I'm sure there's 50, 100 now. And so I just think it's becoming a lot more prevalent. One of the studies, RAINN, is a great resource it's the country, RAINN.org. There's a lot of stats there. One of the stats I read, and I might be off, but it said like a third of all assaults are drug related. I don't believe that. I think it's way higher than that. It's hard to track, but that's what they're showing. I think it's significantly higher. I also think people might not report it as much because you question your own judgment. Sometimes you question, like, did I do something wrong? Was I really drugged? I must have been in the wrong place or done something that caused this to happen.
Right.
So I think those kind of things go along with it, to where it might not be as reported as much. I can just tell you the messages that I've gotten from people, it's 90% of the messages were drug related. It's significant. And that's where I do think sobriety is important, and especially in the workplace. Like if you're going, and I would never have listened to this advice when I was in my 20s. So like I would have been like, oh, that's not going to happen to me, that kind of thing. And it did. But I wouldn't drink at work events, and I would always go with somebody I knew really well, because when you are given date rape drugs, you behave a little bit differently. And if people don't know you, they might just think you're drunk. But if you know that person, and predators do that intentionally, they bring you around a bunch of witnesses that say, oh, she was okay, she was just drinking. But if it's someone that knows you, they would be like, what is wrong with you? Like, you don't ever act this way. And so I would always make sure to have, if you are drinking, make sure you have someone that knows you with you.
Yeah, I believe. And if you're not out there drinking at industry events, I think someone's gonna be like, well, she doesn't ever really drink at industry events. Something must be wrong.
Well,
or,
yeah, well, not even that, but I think there is a new perception about sobriety today than there was maybe when we were younger. I think there's a real strong sober movement happening. And if I saw a young person not drinking, I would have a lot of respect for them, because it's hard to do it's hard to do at any age, but especially when you're younger, but if I saw a young person not drinking at an industry event, I would have a lot of respect for them.
Well, I think there was a post and this is completely a different topic though. I think Strip Bomb Guy had on his Instagram, he says, now's the time of year and other times of year that these companies go and take all these people on these booze-filled different things, and some top salesperson is going to do something stupid and lose their job. So it's not even just the risk of a predator taking advantage of an opportunity, in these types of, environments with, a lot of alcohol and different things. But I remember working for my husband's law firm before I got into commercial real estate, and we interviewed someone. And I think the way I asked the question, I think he had like a canned response that wasn't that would avoid what actually happened. But I asked the attorney, I said, you've been with that other company for quite some time, and it ended, in December of last year. And I think it was maybe because I said December or the way I worded it. And he's like, well, I haven't told anybody else this, but yeah, I got too drunk at the Christmas party and I said something wrong to like the partner's wife. And then he told me what he said, and I was like, and then we didn't hire him, but one thing is he did seem like a perfectly fine attorney, and he probably had a lapse in judgment, but he did just seem like he was looking for a job, not a long-term thing. We ended up picking someone else. But I think that perhaps I think the sober movement is a good thing, because those that can tend to, especially in those kinds of environments, drink too much, there are definitely some negative ramifications.
Yeah. Beyond just being hurt, it can hurt your career in so many different ways. That would be my advice, is not to drink at industry events. I think you will be seen as someone who's very disciplined and driven, while also protecting yourself. But I definitely didn't do that when I was younger. So there's no judgment here.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I really appreciate you sharing your story again. And we also know who to call for mixed use in Nashville. That's for sure. Or you work nationally as well?
Yeah, so I'm still working in San Diego and California, and I've got a project in St. Petersburg, Florida, the Sundial. Love that asset. So yeah, just kind of doing a mixed use projects around the country.
Awesome. Well, it's been so good to have you here. Is there anything else you want to talk about today?
Just thank you so much. I always love chatting with you and spending time with you, and I always learn something. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you to everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. Let's keep going beyond and strengthening our mindset. This is Amy Calandrino signing.